The Time Shift.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Time Shift. This week I'm reviewing the latest episode of Doctor Who titled The Church on Ruby Road. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below by, well, just going down and leaving a comment down below. As your favourite, just a like, favorite, subscribe, click the bell and do all the YouTube stuff that YouTube wants you to do, because YouTube is an increasingly scary place to small broadcasters. Support your local small broadcaster today. It will do them a power of good. Now on to the review, and we start off, as we often do with these reviews, by talking about the writing and the story. And we'll just say for the here and now, I'm really not sure what to exactly say about this one. For the record, I'm talking about this episode the day after it broadcast. I'm recording this on the 26th of December. My feelings on the matter are a little bit more subdued than they were, but I'll just say here and now, before we get too far into the review, that I thought the episode itself was perfectly fine, and that's just about all that it was. I don't take offence to it in quite the way certain other commentators on YouTube and in the wider discourse of this entire series are concerned, but at the same time I really cannot say that this was a home run, a smashing success, and was the glorious dawn of a new era. This was an episode which was perfectly fine, and that's just about all that it was. It ticks the boxes, it gets the grade, it does everything that it needs to, but it really didn't blow my socks off. But with all that said, let's get into a little bit more of a positive slant here before we get too far into the episode itself. And I will say is that I do feel that despite certain things I've been said on the internet, I think that the pacing of this episode was near perfect. There was a nice gradual build into everything, a nice chance to really just let things settle and let us get a full grasp of the characters and situations that they were in. I've been on the record time and again saying that I've not been a massive fan of the Russell D Davies era of writing. The whole thing of David Tennant, most likely David Tennant, running along and pointing at stuff, delivering exposition whilst the dun 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 music playing in the background was something that just irritated the piss out of me. And as we saw further into these specials, there was a part of me that was worried that, oh god, we're going to get back into this era again. This time we didn't really get that. There was that moment midway through in the episode where the Doctor was running across the rooftops, but that felt a little bit more appropriate, and it was a perfect time for that. It wasn't a case of, oh crap, we've only got 5 minutes left of the episode, let's just cram everything into it. I think the time spent developing our characters, getting a better understanding of Ruby and who she is, was great. I have to agree with some of the discourse online, however, that it feels as though we're still missing an element to her. This isn't quite the whole thing of rounding her character off and to really making her into a three-dimensional entity, but I feel as though, because of just the sheer number of question marks around her character, that it's kind of hard to get a grasp on her. She is essentially being set up to be the series-long mystery. She is the girl who waited, the impossible child, whichever Moffat era kind of trope that you want to lean into it. The whole mystery of this season coming forward, and possibly for her run on Doctor Who, and possibly going into Gatwa's third run in this series, is going to end up being trying to solve the mystery as to who Ruby's parents really are, where does she really come from. That just feels like the way to things. That feels like that's going to be the true emotive core of the season going forward, and that itself is something that I'm looking forward to. I will discuss the characters in a little bit more detail when I talk about the performances later on, but I'm interested to see where they go with it. I think there's a number of different theories that you could lead into it. Of course, there's always the classic theories of it being Susan or some other character from the classic run of things, but hey, we'll see how all that goes further on. I will say that I did like most of the humour in this episode. As with always the case, though, with Russell T Davies and his style of comedy writing, it's a bit hit and miss for me. I don't want to say that he has a tin ear for comedy, which is something I have said time and time again, but I think this time it did work, and a lot of it felt a little bit more character-driven than anything else. I will have to say that I wasn't entirely... I'm not entirely keen on the whole stuff with the Goblins. I think that the whole mystery for them just felt as though it was solved way too quickly, which was kind of the point, because the Doctor and co thought, oh, we've saved the day, nothing more to worry about, oh crap, things have gone to pot. And not only that is the fact that, right at the start of the episode, the Doctor knew what they were, and knew how they worked, and knew how they functioned. Like, going into all of this, given all the speculation, I thought that'd be a little bit more of a case of the Doctor not quite getting them. Like, oh, goblins don't exist, they're a thing from folklore, they're not really real. But might they be real, actually? Maybe they've been hidden away in some far corner of the universe all this time, but their technology doesn't function the way that it's supposed to function, it's a little bit more different. Is there some kind of stranger mystery going on here? and that didn't really feel like the case. The Goblins just ultimately felt like any other Doctor Who villain at any point during the classic modern, or now regrettably the post-modern run of Doctor Who. You could almost literally swap these goblins out for any other gribbly, bitey monsters, and the general thrust of anything would have been more or less the same. The big Goblin King could quite easily be replaced with an Absorbaloff for what it's worth, and just replace all the little goblins with some other minor minion creature, and the core of the episode and the story itself would have remained the same. I will say that I did love the just sheer out-and-out wild creativity that was going on in this episode. Like, yes, the goblins weren't used quite as much as I would like them to do, but the fact that their ship is literally a floating pirate ship and all the circuitry is just a series of ropes and pulleys and strings, I think is kind of genius. And I will admit, and I'll put my hands up here, I hate musicals and I hate musical numbers, but when it kicked off within the episode, I kind of enjoyed it for what it was. I will admit, I think that the Goblin song itself was a little bit too poppy for my liking. I think that maybe given the aesthetic, it should have been more like a sea shanty, but it worked for what it was. It was a wild, crazy moment, the kind of thing I really do love, something that harkens back to the Patrick Troughton era of Doctor Who, when the episodes just got really wild and wacky, and I hope that we see a little bit more of that going forward, but hopefully not in a way that ultimately makes me irritated to the back teeth. You know, the little moment that we had the Doctor and Ruby singing was cute for what it was. It's a fun little bit, and it feels like in character for the Doctor, and kind of for Ruby as well, even though she kind of didn't get it, but hey, comes through the character. I will disagree with a slight point that has been made online with some of the comments about the character of Ruby. I don't think that she is a generic companion character. I do think there's a little bit more behind her, but I will admit that yes, there does seem to be a little bit too much of the, oh golly gee shucks, we're going on an adventure feel that you get a little bit too much with modern Doctor Who companions. But again, I'll discuss those kind of things later on as we get into the performances and such, because I have a few things to say about that. I will say is that it is neat that Russell T Davies is trying to do something with the whole timeless child thing. He's trying to build it up a little bit more, or not build it up. Build it up makes it feel as like he's going to do some kind of exploration to it. It feels more like the case of he's trying to recontextualize it. He's trying to make it into something a little more workable, that this and the Flux are essentially going to be the time war for this particular era of Doctor Who that we're getting into. This is going to be the driving force behind some of the angst and worries and dark side to the Doctor's personality, which is fine. I will say is that I prefer the idea of the Flux and the timeless child being stuff that motivates and gives a certain degree of character to this incarnation of the Doctor, because it's at least stuff that we've gone through and, depending on your point of view, suffered through alongside the Doctor. So actually being on that journey alongside them is something I really do enjoy, a lot more than the whole time war stuff, as that kind of felt more like a pull so that we didn't have to put the Time Lords in it, but that's a discussion and a debate for a whole other time. I will say that as a whole entity, the episode itself is fine. I do feel that final 5 minutes or so does rush a little bit too much. I had felt that maybe the big revelation moment that the Doctor gets to see, the moment that no, actually, let me rephrase that. The moment that we see at the start of the episode where the Doctor comes out of the TARDIS and got tears running down their face, I thought that might be a flash forward to something that happens maybe next season or a season or two down the line, but in actuality it's just something that happens within this episode. Not the biggest problem in the world, but I do feel that it does take away a little bit more of the mystery, and it does make me worry as to where exactly we're going to go with the mystery of Ruby. I mean, on the one hand, it's a case of, right, I would be perfectly fine if she just turned out to be just a regular, ordinary person, and it's just the fact that her parents don't have any DNA on record, which is why the TV program never picked up on her. On the other hand, I can easily see a case where they're going to make actually some kind of mysterious, strange, alien entity, and that's the reason why nothing came forward. We really don't know, and we'll probably end up finding out as we go forward with it. I have to say, though, we need to pivot into some of the negatives, though, for this particular episode, and I have to say that, as I said towards the start of this review, this episode is perfectly fine for what it is. However, I must be brutally honest, I think that this is the weakest debut for a Doctor of the modern run of Doctor Who. It's fine as an episode. Had this been just a mid-season thing, had this been the first episode after a companion left it and this was in her introduction to Ruby after having spent some time with this incarnation of the Doctor, it would have been perfectly fine. But as the first episode of a new Doctor and a new companion at the start of a brand new era of Doctor Who, at the start of what will be a brand new season of Doctor Who, it feels, and I'd hate to say it, just rather mid. It's not a bad episode, it's not a terrible episode, it's not a god-awful episode, it's just perfectly fine for what it is. It gets the grade, it passes with flying colours in some regards. It's a really fun episode with some great creativity and fun in it, some great little gadgets and great little moments. But at the same time, this isn't the thing that's making me go, wow, this is it, we are here, this is truly a brand new dawn for a brand new era of Doctor Who. This really just, it really ticks the boxes and declares a bold new chapter in the history of Doctor Who. It doesn't. It frankly doesn't. I may discuss it in a little bit more detail when we get into the overview, but for here and now, this just feels like business as usual. And I don't mean that to be dismissive. I know it sounds like damning with faint praise, but it's perfectly fine for what it is. It's fun. I would have liked a more Christmassy feeling episode for the first Christmas special in about 5 years or so, but as it's an episode of Doctor Who in and of itself, it was perfectly fine. Now we're going to take a moment to discuss the performances, and I have to say that I don't want to come out and say that I like Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor right from the off. Not out of any kind of, reluctance to give praise where praise is due, but, I like to take my time with these things, spend a little bit more time to just really understand the character, get a feel for how they're going with it. But I have to say that Ncuti Gatwa, as the Doctor, from what, let's be honest, what little we see of him actually being the Doctor, is really a very exciting prospect for me. I will admit that there are plenty of moments within the episode itself where he just cuts such a distinct figure that it looks like he's been in the role for ages. Just these moments where you just see him observing the scene, observing the moment, processing everything in his mind. I really like that. There's an air of this Doctor, and I know some people might get mad when I say this, but there's a slight air to this Doctor of the third Doctor of Jon Pertwee's. Maybe in the more serious moments, more so than the jovial moments. I think the jovial moments lean a little bit too far into the modern run of Doctor Who's more wacky and light-hearted moments with the Doctor. But with that said, I really do like what we're seeing thus far of him. I want to see where we can go with this. I want to see an episode where we see Gatwa really grappling with some truly challenging material to really just show us what he can do as an actor. I'm really looking forward to that, because what we see in this episode, he can do the charming, charismatic stuff, he can do the more fun, laid-back stuff, he can do the more intense stuff, but I want to see some of the more dramatic stuff. This is a nice little sampling, this is a nice little tease for stuff which will come later. I just want to see where we go with it, because he could be one of my favourite Doctors if he really just stick the landing with it, and that's providing that we get some good writing material that really plays to him as a character. Now we're going to be talking about, and forgive me for not having the name written down ahead of time, I am recording on this Boxing Day, this won't be a particularly long review from me, but the actor playing Ruby, I thought was great for what she was. I think that she feels just, this is going to sound like a damning with faint praise thing, probably sounding like it leans more in the damning than praise thing, but she plays a normal young woman very well. She comes across as just a very natural person. Much like with Gatwa, I feel that we're missing a few things from her to really make me like her as a character. I will admit that, again, I am really nervous as what they're going to do as far as her personal mystery is concerned. I'm concerned that the big reveal is that she's going to be a Time Lord or some strange entity or an alien, when I would be just perfectly fine with the fact that she's just a human being and her parents just disappeared for whatever reason. Doesn't even have to be Doctor Who related. They could have just gone on the lam. They could have done anything else. But, she does a good job for what she does. I mean, most of the episode itself focused around her, but it didn't quite give her enough for me to really to say that she was a standout performance. Everyone else in the episode was good. Ruby's family was great. The grandma was great. I love a sassy granny character. They're really always fun to have. This was, of course, the return of Davina McCall to the series. Last time we saw her, well, we didn't see her, we heard her. She was in the final two parts of the Christopher Eccleston era, and now she's back playing herself, getting bullied by gremlins or goblins or whatever. Hey, she did a decent role for whatever. I think that some of her delivery of some of the lines wasn't quite there. Like when she's in her natural television presenter stuff, perfect, great, A grade. I can see why you get hired for all this stuff. When she's got to act a little bit, maybe not so much, but as a whole entity, perfectly fine. So as with that said, let's get into the overview and say that, as I've said previously and I've said repeatedly, this is a perfectly fine episode. I don't want to say it, but afraid I'm going to have to. This is the episodiest episode of Doctor Who that ever did Doctor Who. It's perfectly fine for what it is. It's not the bold start to a brand new era that I would have liked it to be, because let's face it, that's how it's been built. I will be blunt, I think the reason why this upcoming season is being advertised as season 1 isn't really because it's a brand new era, it's just because of the Disney money. This will be the first season of Doctor Who ever to be included on Disney+. Disney's putting a lot of money into it, so as far as they're concerned, this is season 1. I have to say that I'm not a fan of this whole thing, because let's be honest, as other people have pointed out online in other commentary pieces, that we have just come off a 3-parter which was steeped in nostalgia and reverence for the previous seasons that have come before it. Material and stuff which anyone that's coming to this series for the first time is not going to know about. And it didn't just touch on them, it wallowed in them, it swam in them, it discussed them as though that was information that we all should know, when the truth of the matter is that for anyone coming to the show new, they're not going to. And if you're only watching this on Disney+, you're probably never going to. I presume that as soon as the Disney money has run out, we will go back to the same numbering conventions as before. If not immediately, then sometime thereafter, but we'll see where all of this ends up going. That is probably the biggest gripe I have with this episode, because the episode itself, again, is fine. It's fun for what it needed to be. A Christmas Doctor Who episode that didn't feel Christmassy in the slightest, but was at least fun enough. Not to get into a rant, because I know that Vizio is starting to get on a little bit, but I'll just say here and now, and this is kind of a note from the Chris Chibnall area, you never needed to have a Christmas special that took place on Christmas or had anything to do with Christmas. You just needed to have something that was fun. Something that we could all sit there and enjoy after we're half cut from drinking way too much or falling into a food coma because we've eaten way too much. Something that little kids and grannies and grandlads could all sit and go, oh, I remember this programme, oh, what an adventure. Which is something that we really didn't get from the specials in the Chris Chibnall area, with the exception of the one where they're in the lockup, which is, I think this was the best of the specials that they did. This year, we don't quite get the full wackiness. I think that maybe if we were going to lean into the wackiness with the whole Goblin song number, that should have been more of a feeling throughout it. But beyond that, it's fine for what that is. But anyway, there's not going to be a comment corner in this video, not for any particularly bad reason, it's just because I don't feel particularly well today. I just want to get this review out there and just share it all with you, good listeners. I might do a longer comment corner next time I come back to Doctor Who, which at this point won't be until May, unless I do something between then and now. But in any case, thank you all for watching, thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!